this response to climate change and technological hegemony. Before we come to the main program, so let's begin our conference by reciting Al-Fatiha. I would like to invite the director of Graduate School of UIN Syarif Hidayat Jakarta to give opening remark. Please, Professor Zulkifli.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wa bihi nasta'in ala umuri waddin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil mursalin sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi washabihi ajma'in wa ba'du. It's a great honor for me to welcome you all to this very important event, which is the 9th ICIIS International Colloquium on Interdisciplinary Islamic Studies, conducted by our graduate school of Syarif Hidayatullah State Islamic University, Jakarta, in collaboration with postgraduate program UIN Mataram here in Jayakarta Hotel in Lombok. I just want to thank you very much for your participation, especially keynote speaker, Prof. Arun Raisa from Colombia. Is that correct? California. I'm sorry. And Professor siapa? Oh, I just remember Abu Umar. Muhammad Abu Umar. They are all senior research fellow from WITA in Depok. Thank you very much for coming, and other respected speakers for tonight. There are, as you see, Professor Muhammad Munir, Professor Arndt, Graf, and Dr. Nabilah. Dr. Nabilah is our alumni. Yeah, is that correct, Pak Jem? Yeah, and we are very grateful for their participation in our conference. As you can see, this is the 9th year of our conference. During our periods, it is the 4th year. In 2023, we conducted in Banjarmasin, and after that in Manado in 2024, and last year in Medan, North Sumatra in 2025, and this year here in Lombok. So we may have a good opportunity to have academic exchange, intellectual exchange between scholars and students. We invited many speakers and students, or especially graduate students, to participate in this conference. Besides, certainly, we also traveling, yeah, sightseeing. Don't forget hari Rabu ya, on Wednesday. Kemana kita Pak Jem?
Gili Trawangan.
Oh, Gili Trawangan. So please, your time, yeah, for the visit. And so we may organize this event as effective as possible, Pak Arif, Pak Jem, yeah, and all committee. So tonight, before we do pembukaan tomorrow ya, biasa sebelum pembukaan kita sudah mulai dulu acaranya. This afternoon, parallel session and this plenary session for tonight, and tomorrow will be pembukaan. We invited the governor, actually, the governor of Mataram, and also the mayor, and the president of a university, Prof. Acim but now he's looking something new tonight. Katanya tadi dia bilang, saya bosan mikir win. Dia bilang capek, jadi saya mau jalan-jalan. Refreshing ya, Pak Rektor taught me this morning. So he's going out for sightseeing tonight. He's not with us, and tomorrow will be with us, and the president of UIN Mataram as well, and beside our keynote speakers for tomorrow morning. So I'm very grateful for the committees, whole committees, the president of the committees, Prof. JM. Ini presiden panitia sepanjang tahun. And the secretary ya, Bu Maswani. Please berdiri Bu Maswani. Yeah. And many others. And also our lecturers, our professors. Prof. Arif, he is the head of international office in Jayakarta, and Prof. Rusli, our professor at graduate school. Prof. Hamdani, head of master's program, and Ibu Rizky, berdiri Prof. Hamdani. Okay. And Bu Rizky Handayani, the secretary of master's program. And Pak Fuad Jabali, our lecturer, senior lecturer. Pak Adnan, Kiai Adnan, yang selalu memikirkan umat, kan kita ajak ke sini. Thank you for participation and the whole committee. Siapa panitia-panitia? Panitia kita, Mas Jai, Mas Adam, berdiri. Mas Dwi, Julia, Arif, Mas Arif, semua, Mbak Ana, mana? Mas Sopyan. Oke, kita bawa rombongan semua dari sana ya. Of course, our student, graduate student dari Basnas, mana? Basnas? There are 7. Okay. And masa S3, Abdullah, also my student. Ya, Abdullah Bek adalah mahasiswa Ph.D kita dan di bawah bimbingan saya. Dan we also have lectures from program studi Bahasa dan Sastra Indonesia. Oke, Ibu Nuryani, Ibu Nur Hamida, sama Novi, juga our student from Samarinda. Okay, thank you for coming. And last but not least, my colleague from Director of Graduate School UIN Riau. Yeah, Prof. Helmiati. And Prof. Agus, are you here, Prof. Agus? Oh, thank you, Prof. Agus, Director of Postgraduate Program for UIN Malang. Thank you for coming. Kalau yang lain belum disebut, jangan marah ya. I can't remember. So, thank you for all your coming, right? And enjoy our conference. Kita ini jadi ada nuansa akademiknya, tetapi jangan lupa kita juga refreshing ya. Ya, itu panitia yang benar. Kita juga publikasi ya. Jadi mahasiswa kita mereka wajib subjeknya Colloquium ya. Berapa kredit? 6 ya? 6 SKS ya, betul ya? Oke, taruhlah 6. Nanti ada penilaiannya. And then don't forget your paper should be submitted to certain reputable journals, ya, or paper proceeding, ya, and especially indexed by Scopus, ya. Karena kita ini agak Scopus minded lah, Scopus minded, because our university is always trying to achieve high rank, either by Scopus institution, yeah, or by KS ranking, or by Times Higher Education, yeah. And now we are grateful that we get 29th rank by subject Divinity, Theology, and Religious Studies. And of course, it is a result of whole of our efforts, not only by lectures, professors, but also by our graduate students, because our students should publish their paper in Scopus or in reputable national journals. Thank you for your great efforts, and thank you for coming and enjoy our discussion today and tomorrow until tomorrow night, yeah, tomorrow night, because Wednesday we going sightseeing. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Mr. Director of the Graduate School, Professor Zulkifli.
Yusof saya nggak nyebut ya?
He's not around? He's not around, I think.
Okay, he's not here.
All right. As mentioned by our director, one of the interesting thing of this annual ICIIS conference is that in addition to academic activity, we also have a side program which is also interesting, visiting, beaches or sightseeing. Yeah, so don't forget to join this additional program of our conference on Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday morning, early morning. Yeah. Remember, you have to set up your watch, yeah, waking call. All right, our topic today, this first day of this conference is Define Balance in Digital Age, Islamic Studies Response to Climate Change and Technological Hegemony. So this theme of the seminar prompts us to reflect critically on one of the most pressing intersections of our time, the relationship between religious ethical framework and the rapidly of digital technology amid the escalating global ecological crisis. So in order to discuss this topic, we have distinguished scholars. The first scholars is Professor Dr. Arndt Graf from Goethe-Universität, Frankfurt am Main, Germany. But it is very unfortunate he couldn't make it. But he already sent the recording, I think, for his speech. Yeah. And then the second scholar is Professor Munir from Pakistan International Islamic University. And we have also Professor Dr. Haji Subhan Abdullah Acim. Is that correct, Pak? GM? Oh, no, tomorrow, yeah? Okay. So, without further ado, I will invite or I will ask the committee to play Professor Graf's speech. Please, Pak siapa? Pak Dwi. We can watch together and listen to his speech.
So, hello everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be back at the family of Universitas Islam Negeri, Jakarta and Lombok. Thank you. My talk today is about climate change, digital revolution, and Indonesian Islamic studies. As you can see here, the main picture on the first slide shows an effort from one of the Islamic universities, in this case it's Universitas Muhammadiyah Jayakarta, that has a news feed about El Nino, climate change, and the effect on Indonesia. So it is an important topic already, and I think it's going to be even more important if you're looking at the trends of how climate change and digital revolution are influencing the Indonesian society, and hence I think it's a very important topic for Indonesian Islamic studies. Well, let's continue maybe with a little bit of an overview. Up to the right, you see an image from Jakarta. Banjir, frequent flooding in Jakarta. Probably it's going to be increasingly problematic. So also because of climate change, that's one of the phenomena that we unfortunately have to live with. This talk is going to talk about three blocks. On the right, you see Indonesian Islamic studies. On the left is climate change impacted Indonesia. And in the middle is the digital revolution, for instance, as we all experience it through social media or now also with artificial intelligence, AI. So this talk is basically trying to combine these three blocks in a way that would make sense and what could perhaps contribute to a broader discussion, maybe a collaborative research project or something like that. So the impacts of climate change in Indonesia would include increasing health risks, because it's getting hotter and drier, for instance. Agriculture, forestry, fishing, economy at large is affected. Livelihoods are in danger. Then you have the problems of storms and natural catastrophes, disasters. You have rising sea levels, which is a risk for islands and also for coastal areas, for instance, Jakarta. You have economic, social, and political impact at large. We get to that in a little bit. And also, we have a special challenge, the El Nino years. And this year, to 26, 27, is supposedly a super El Nino coming. So Indonesian Islamic studies have, for a very long time, always were active in analysis, theological analysis, but also social analysis, political analysis, cultural analysis, in religious consolation and orientation, providing, amongst others, social and political advice, guidance, and also in the case of Indonesia, acknowledge very much, and I admire that very much, is this mainstream of moderasi beragama, which is not easy, in particular if the stress factors are getting stronger. So if you look at the climate change general trend and peaks, to the upper left, you see an image of a very famous image, originally from Compass and now everywhere. Reformasi 1997-98. People remember it in the context of the Asia crisis, maybe in connection to domestic political issues, new order, succession of President Suharto, and so on. However, what is often overlooked, not many people are discussing that, is that 1997-98 was super El Nino. You see that here in my graph to the lower left, that unprecedented 1997 was extremely dry and hot, and that led to a very bad harvest in 1997 of staple foods and of other agricultural products, which would lead to rising prices. 1997, especially for food, and because at that time, at least, many merchants were Chinese Indonesians. There was already in 1997 very negative feelings, sentiments against the Chinese merchants in Indonesia, and then generalizing against the Chinese minority in general. So if you see there is a connection to climate change, and if you think then the social unrest that came in 1998, 1997, 1998 was not only a political unrest, there was also all sorts of violence happening, and that was partly due to the climate change induced bad harvest in 1997. So I would think this is a very interesting topic. If you're going through the recent peaks of El Nino, super El Ninos in Indonesia, I think what kind of political impact was there, and where people were mostly thinking about other reasons, other issues. How is the link between reformasi, for instance, and climate change? And if you do that more systematically, that might be something that could help us all in the future, especially in the coming El Nino peaks this year, next year, and the following. So yes, the climate change it has a big impact on society, on economy and politics. It's very timely that you're taking this as a topic of this international conference seriously. Um, the connecting question is, how does the different media landscape, which is now different than, say, in 1997, 98, impact this pending climate crisis in terms of the way we can handle it, the way we can discuss it? And in particular, of course, yes, the agency and the role of Indonesian Islamic scholars is Indonesian Islamic studies. So if you go to the library, we find the important contribution from the Chicago fundamentalism project. To the left, the image, you see the 5 most important publications that came out of this research project. 1987 to 1995 was the publications. They help us to understand how historically, traditionally, religions, plural, have reacted to climate changes or natural catastrophes, to make it a bit broader. So also include earthquakes, tsunamis, flooding, that kind of stuff. So historically, there were always natural catastrophe in human history. And so the challenge or the possibility, the risk of dying because of such natural catastrophe is a very human experience. In analytical terms, theoretical terms, we can call this a liminal experience, because we're talking about the limit of our life. So the liminality and experience is a very human thing. If you think all of us are getting sick, ill one day, probably might have to die. So that is a liminality as a very human experience. And because of that, all religions around the world and in history always provide orientation, support, consolation to face such challenges. Now, if you're talking that the climate risk related natural catastrophes will increase, there you have definitely a very important role of Indonesian Islamic studies in this case, or other religious scholars. because that's the role that religion always plays. If there is danger, if there's a risk in society, if there's an experience of liminality uh, getting getting more frequent, then religion is there. And I thank you again for organizing this conference around this topic. Among the help that comes from religions are rituals, for instance. They soothe, they calm, they provide a structure, a frame in lifetime, from birth over wedding to death. Uh, uh, you have religions, you have rituals for the entire life. Then you have wisdom from the scriptures or the traditions. Then you have a very important thing, community solidarity. Churches, religious experience is never alone. In Islam, you have the Ummah that can help. You have religious organizations that can help. And also what can help is historical, traditional approaches, responses to natural disasters. There is some storage in the history of how humans have reacted in the past to these things that can be of use today again and in the future. If you look into the liminality as experience a little bit closer, we could get some insight, theoretical insight, from scholars such as Stenner, 2017, who were writing about theories about liminality and aesthetics. So the idea would be, since the challenge is there for all humans of liminality, death in extreme case, humans have to cope with conflicting scripts. Like one script ends suddenly, it breaks, and there's another script. Like one script would be life, and the next script that starts then is death. So you have conflicting scripts, breaking scripts. That is something that is a very human experience that we all have to deal with. And so the idea from theory of aesthetics is that very early on humans have learned that there is this conflicting script and have used this experience or the anticipation of this experience in order to produce things that help us cope with this approaching liminality plot, with this conflicted script. So you would have in religion very often, typically, this experience of an idea about the afterworld, what happens afterwards. So you have basically in every religion there is a conflictive script, the liminality of human experience, and what comes later. But you also have a similar, smaller though, a way of using this kind of script in music, in literature, in all sorts of arts forms, uh, where often we use this kind of breaking script in order to create an aesthetic sensation. Sound, visuals, texts can help us to cope with that. And so, for instance, musical therapy in psychotherapy today that works with this kind of a plot, or painting as a therapy, psychotherapy, that would help. Or historically, if you look at art, artworks, paintings, for instance, you would be able to somehow get over a problem, a psychological problem, doing that. So it would be in a small version of this use of the conflicting scripts in religions, according to the Chicago Fundamentalism Project. And then if you go further to authors who think about liminality and experience in terms of aesthetics theory. So it might be helpful because that would leave us or lead us to the connection between climate change as a challenge, as a risk that we all perceive, and what religion that is using such liminality plots, conflicting scripts, as a response. If you're getting a bit more concrete and less theoretical, we can think that the role of Indonesian Islam is very important for social, economic, and political impact of climate change. On the left, you have an image of some of the recent floods in Sumatra, December 2025. On the right, you have images of very important Muslim organizations in Indonesia, Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. Because they are active at every level of society. We also have the logo of this conference, because this is also a part of dealing with the problem of climate change and its impact on Indonesia by thinking about, discussing about it. So there has to be universities such as the two UINs that are organizing this conference that have to organize exchange of thoughts, analysis, contributions on the phenomenon at hand. So if you think at the various levels where destruction, natural catastrophe, climate change can hit society, there you always have a different response of religion, in this case, Islam in Indonesia. At the family level, you can have an ustaz or an ulama coming to provide individual support and counseling. If somebody is sick, if somebody is dying because of climate change, for other reasons, there is certainly somebody there that helps these people. A very, very important personal experience, especially for the person who is weak in the moment and might die. Um, so very important. The family level is very, very important. The personal level is very important. However, it also goes beyond that. It goes to the neighborhood and to the village. They also have religious activities. For instance, around the mosque, one can organize networks in emergency mitigation. If there's a flood, if there is a drought, youth groups can help families that are particularly hit, that cannot deal with the situation. So you can organize solidarity at the village level through the existing religious networks. Very important immediate emergency mitigation, also long term. At the provincial level, you also have, of course, the support responses from the local and the provincial authorities, and they can be supported again by the religious organizations active at the province level. They can, for instance, influence public discourse from measured and timely response. This goes also to the national level. They can organize solidarity from other parts of Indonesia, including, in this case, from non-Muslim parts of Indonesia, in the spirit of moderasi beragama. So if there is a tsunami hitting Aceh or another part of Indonesia, all of Indonesia will help, of course, for many years. And it's also possible to link up with possible external support from the United Nations, from international organizations, other countries, governments, other academias, maybe in other countries, in case there's a need or an idea, maybe this could be of interest or of help. So I think if you think of the social, economic, and political role of Indonesian Islam is very big in responding to natural disasters brought about with climate change. Now we have something that we can link the climate change in Indonesia with the internet use development in Indonesia. Very interesting. You might know this very famous quote by David T. Hill and Krishna Sen from 2007 in their book about the internet in Indonesia's new democracy, where they said the Reformasi movement was in essence the first revolution fought on the internet. Reformasi movement 1997-98 in conjunction with the Super El Nino. At that time, 1% of Indonesia's population had access to the internet. And yet there is already a claim that it was so important, the internet was so important politically, that it would be highly crucial for the outcome of the Reformasi movement. Now today, more than 20 years later, more than 70% of Indonesia's population have access to the internet. At the same time, as you can see here from the graphs, from the graph on the lower left, the projected super El Niños are increasing. The next one is supposed to come in 26, 27. Now, if more than 70% of Indonesian citizens have access to the internet, and what does this do to dealing with climate change, like the ever-increasing disaster brought about the super El Niños and global warming, and what is in particular the role of social media and artificial intelligence, AI? What role is there for Indonesian Islamic studies? There is already a Center for Digital Society at Universitas Gadjah Mada that is tackling climate crisis in misinformation in Indonesia. So there is already a research project going on. Climate crisis misinformation. That is one of the problems of today. If you're doing it a little bit bigger, climate crisis, misinformation, and disinformation on social media, on the right you see this article that I and Pajoko Muslimin, Professor Muslimin, Jaya Muslimin, have authored in 2022 about social media, Muslim community, and the pandemic, context-oriented approaches to misinformation and disinformation in Indonesia and Malaysia that might be informative if you want to continue researching more about this problem of misinformation in terms of climate crisis in Indonesia. So maybe the Muslim community is of course, because it's so important in Indonesia, is part of this experience of misinformation in Indonesia. The question is, what can be done? Possible responses may include, if I may quote two scholars from Universitas Diponegoro, who happened to get their PhD in Frankfurt last year. The first one is Nuriatul Lailiyah. She says that NU preachers did decide to use social media as influencers during the pandemic in order to combat, to counter extreme and distorted views of Islam in terms of theology. So this is quite an interesting phenomenon that you have on social media. Nahdlatul Ulama, preachers who are active and apparently not individually, but there is a consensus that it is something that NU preachers should do. They should disseminate their views, the moderate views of Islam and society via social media. So quite interesting. That could be of help too when it comes to tackling climate crisis misinformation in Indonesia. The second PhD thesis I would like to highlight here, and you can get both online, they are open access via the webpage of our university library, is by Wahid Abdurrahman, also from Universitas Diponegoro, the Santri networks and the Islamic political turn in Indonesia. So there, if you go into the PhD thesis, we see a meticulous study of how widespread, in this case Santri, political networks are influential in contemporary Indonesian politics. So this is very important, really important factor. So the question is, if it comes to the problem of tackling climate crisis, misinformation, amnesia, probably already happening, these networks are active and have agency in order to formulate adequate political responses to climate risks, climate change risks, and society and politics. So I think this is something, there are studies there about the religious Islamic community in Indonesia being active in very contemporary pressing issues. And I think this is also relevant when it comes to tackling climate crisis misinformation in Indonesia. Now we have this big Islamic organization in Indonesia, Muhammadiyah, that has been embracing artificial intelligence on a very large scale. It was a discovery this year that when I learned about this. So on the webpage of muhammadiyah.org.id, you have Muhammadiyah has great potential to develop ethical and beneficial AI for the advancement of the Ummah as a mainstream decision. And among the concrete examples is that what you see here is from Instagram, social media, is an app, a chatbot that Muhammadiyah has been embracing in order to spread their solutions, their responses to current issues. So this can be used, of course, also in order to disseminate responses to climate change and to tackle problems of misinformation and disinformation. Also important is the Muhammadiyah organization is huge. It has 175 universities and 5,000 schools. So it has a real impact on the scholarship in Indonesia. Also many state universities, you have Muhammadiyah scholars, Muhammadiyah affiliated scholars, as well as you have NU affiliated colleagues. So if these two organizations together decide to have a clear sikap, a clear attitude, what they as organizations can do to help in this problem, then I think these two organizations can help with climate change risks. And we as scholars, we can study that too. So as a conclusion, for a short contribution, I would think important is to depart from older contributions to, in this case, sociology of religion that discuss the connection between natural disasters and consolation um, uh, with the help of religion. Important there, the Chicago Fundamentalism Project. Important also because the last volume was published in 1995 before the internet became so widespread and its abuse, and before artificial intelligence was even thought of, and before the natural disasters with the super El Nino events were taking place, like the one in 1997, 98. Since then, since this last volume of the Chicago Fundamentalism Project was published in 95, we have like a constant rise of climate change related natural disasters from peak to peak, meaning from super El Ninos to super El Ninos. One example is the super El Nino 1997 and 8 in connection to Reformasi. And then the next one is expected 2067, the hottest year ever. What will it do to harvest in Indonesia? What will it do to the health of people who have to live in these hot circumstances? I think this conference here in May 2025, 2026, sorry, May 2026 is right at the right moment because in the coming year, we're expecting a super El Nino, the hottest year ever is supposed to come. And at the same time, we have more than 70% of Indonesians using the internet. So that could be of help if it is used in a wise way. Um, because this digital revolution, and we are living in the middle of a digital revolution, is profoundly changing the perception of climate change. People can have more information, or some more disinformation or misinformation through social media, but they can also organize themselves faster. So that's something, and you can also have the chatbots that we just talked about. So we have climate risk, misinformation and disinformation among the concrete challenges. However, as we know from history, Indonesian Islamic scholars are there to analyze, it's the rational tradition, to teach, to propagate, to turn themselves into influencers, if necessary, on social media, to reach wider audiences, and to engage also in social and political networks at every level of society. So this is among the activities that Indonesian Islamic scholars studies are already active in, and if we are facing this challenge this year, the hottest year ever, then I think this is quite important. It's an asset. There is agency there that can help in preparing for the challenges ahead. And this is also important that large organizations such as Muhammadiyah have already been embracing AI as a tool, so it's not something new, including for responses to climate change risks. So I think there is already help that is on the way. There's already some anticipation, some mitigation being organized. And so with this, I would like to thank you very much. Terima kasih, oh, with an A at the end. And here you have an image from a body of knowledge in the middle of winter from Goethe-Universität Frankfurt. And of course, you're very welcome to visit us in Frankfurt whenever you feel you can come. And there is travel is possible again. So thank you very much. And I would like to thank again the organizers and see you again soon, hopefully in Indonesia or here in Frankfurt.
Okay, give applause to the Professor Graf's recording, yeah. As Professor Graf highlighted in his presentation, Indonesia in particular has experienced the devastating risk of climate change, including flooding, drought, the increasing price of food, and also global warming. And due to its devastating impact, climate change is no longer an abstract concern. Now it becomes an immediate global crisis that challenges not only scientific and political framework, but also ethical and theological paradigm. Now, uh, the question is how Islamic studies address environmental issues and also climate change issue. Yeah, I left this question to the audience to discuss, and hopefully we can generate rich academic insight uh, based on the question that we have. And Professor Graf also proposed how the uh, the use of AI, yeah, can be a means of responding the climate change issue. This is also one of the solutions, uh, considering the development of AI. Okay, thank you, Professor Graf. Now let's move on to the next speaker. I would like to invite our distinguished speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Munir from International Islamic University in Pakistan, Islamabad, Pakistan. Are you with us, Professor Munir?
Yes, I am with you.
All right.
And
How are you in Pakistan right now?
it is terribly hot here, and we are talking about climate change.
Oh,
So,
it is raining. It is raining in the afternoon in Lombok Island.
no, no, that is something else. Right here, it is really, really very, very hot.
All right.
I hope you can hear me clearly, right?
We can hear you clearly. Yeah.
That is a
Okay.
good thing.
Okay, I
That
give
is
you 20 minutes,
okay.
Professor Munir.
Okay.
The time is yours.
So, my 20 minutes starts now. First of all, I am very thankful to the participants and the university, and especially the friends who invited me for this wonderful, by the way, uh, topic to present on. I hope you can see my uh, the slides, right? Can you see the slides?
Doesn't appear yet. We'll be waiting.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet. Wait.
I will share again. Let me quickly share because this will be taking time. Then I'm sharing again. Can you see them now?
Yet.
Yes, I
Can
can.
you? Is it okay now? Can you see it?
Not yet, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay,
First of all,
it's already appeared now.
the time is short. First of all, I am again, trying to say again and again. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's already appear. It's already appear here.
Yeah, at this short notice. And then I thought, that the lecture will be tomorrow in the morning. But then today in the afternoon, I was told, no, it is today in the evening. So that's another surprise, but no problems. Thank you so much for inviting me again. The topic, that I have tried to put on something is divine balance in a digital age, Islamic studies response to climate change and technological hegemony. Basically, I'll be just dividing it into two. And the first one, of course, is exploring the intersection of Islam and digital technology. And in the second part, it will be Islam's response to climate change and whether there are some, statistics that are available, by the way, on what we call the digital Islam or the cyber ummah or the online platforms or not, and to what extent. Now, to begin with, what is digital Islam? There are many terms that are used today, and one is digital Islam. They also call it the discourse of Islam in the digital age. Some call it digital religion, other call it digital ummah, and other call it cyber ummah, and I don't know. There are so many terms that are invented by what? By different authors and used by different authors for various reasons known to them. What is it, by the way? What is digital Islam? What do you mean by this? It is the intersection, transformation, and coexistence of religious practices with digital technology and culture. Or it means showing religious beliefs, experiences, and negotiations emanating from practices, communities, and identities with online spaces such as social media, websites, virtual reality environments, and online forums, and so on. Let us try to define this notion. There are a couple of, by the way, definitions here. First is the interaction between digital tools and Islamic religious activities, for instance, reading, worshipping, or even preaching. Number two, it is the transformation from religious authority from traditional to digital. Number three, it is the cyber ummah or virtual ummah, which brings out the issue of emerging Muslim identities and communities in the cyberspace. Fourthly, it is technologies challenging the traditional interpretation of Islam. And finally, it is the response of Muslim communities to social and cultural issues inside the digital media. Thus, digital Islam is therefore a multidiscipline into theology, plus sociology, plus information technology, and plus cultural studies. Now, what does it investigate? It investigates how online and offline religious spatial activities are entwined and how digital technologies have traditionally shaped religious practices. How digital media shape the concern of how religiously devoted people practice their religion and interact with religious communities and integrate their religion into digital culture, thus changing the contemporary landscape of what? Religiosity. Again, cyber ummah is a community that exists online, transcending the geographical and other borders such as ethnicity and culture. So it has no boundaries, no borders, no boundaries, nothing. Online sites and platforms are used to exchange ideas and concepts relating to Islam and Muslims. And there is recourse to different mainlines and alternative sources of Islamic doctrines and scriptures and online spaces for Muslims. So it's not just, by the way, one mazhab or one school of thought and one interpretation within one mazhab. There is, you can say, a plethora of what we say, everything. What is the influence of digital Islam? There are a couple of influences that I have put together here. Number one, people seek religious information on the internet themselves, which digitally empower them. Now, what is its repercussion? Its repercussion is in number two. This is eroding traditional religious authority. So previously, a person would ask a mufti or a qiyai, a sheikh, about what? A pending problem. And he would find out the answer in what? In the religious text. But right now, people are just Googling these things. They are trying to find out what we say, answers on the internet. And in most cases, they believe that such answers are what? Are okay, and they are happy with them. Now, this has now offered what we call an alternative religious interpretation of Islam. And people have a sort of what we say, they do some sort of what we call forum shopping. So they want to find an interpretation of Islam that suits them. And social media platforms plays a big role in the maintenance of negative stereotyping about Islam and Muslims. So we shouldn't forget that if two answers are good, there may be a website which has something very bad, maybe on the same topic, or maybe against what we say, Islam. And there are too many of them as well. Now, what is Islam's response to climate change? I guess we don't have time to dig deeper into the what is climate change. Of course, we know the phenomena of rising temperatures. We know of the phenomena of rising the sea level. You understand the seawater, and we know that one day the islands that are half a meter above the what we say the sea level or 1 meter above the sea level will disappear. And of course, we also know, the phenomena of El Nino and all the disasters that our previous speaker was just talking about. Of course, Indonesia was just a case, but of course, there are many, many other places where these things are happening. Now, we know that Muslim scholars have been writing on what climate change and in general, in particular, but environmental protection in general, since the late 1960s. And honestly, one of the best studies that I, had with me for the past 20 years or more is a study done by or organized by or commissioned by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, who had asked ulama in the Middle East, great scholars from, the Middle East, especially the GCC countries, who have written the best of the best to understand that they could on environmental protection, including climate change. And that was not just in one language. It was in English, in Arabic, and Spanish, also in French. And I still have a hard copy of that great work. And all of them have agreed on one thing, that who are responsible for what? The climate change. Of course, human beings are responsible for climate change, no one else. And I will sum it up. Inshallah, at the end of the presentation in a statement by this great economist, Schumacher. Climate crisis is basically the problem of disequilibrium in the created. The current state of environment is due to exploitative and disproportionate human action. Now, let's just give an example. Why is, by the way, a polluter, an industrialist who has put a big, big factory, not internalizing what we call the external cost? Why is he not reducing pollution, in other words? Why is he polluting too much? Why is he using raw material or bad or cheaper material? Why is he not, by the way, installing good chimney to reduce either, water pollution or air pollution? Maybe because the state has allowed him to do so. Or the state is not, by the way, doesn't have a strict policy on environmental protection. Now, if a state, by the way, is not by the way, supervising such pollution, in other words, what economists say is, well, the state is like providing subsidy to this polluter or this industrialist. And the industrialist, the polluter, is producing more and more, manufacturing more and more good stuff. And the products that are produced are cheaper and cheaper. Why? Because he is, by the way, polluting. No problem at all. And then it is encouraging people to buy more and more because cheaper products. Now, this is not sustainable. This is very bad. So here, the state has to take action and has to have stringent environmental protection laws. Policy first, convince the people, and then promulgate some law. And if they are not, by the way, they are still violating it, you have to penalize them. And in many cases, what we call the internalization of external cost. There is, the state will, regulate it by imposing either taxes. So every polluter who is polluting has to pay some sort of taxes to the state per liter of pollution or per kilogram of pollution or whatever it is, the case may be. So this is how what we call, you understand, the implementation of the polluter pays principle. In what? In order to address environmental policy in the state. Again, proposing interests are fundamental to natural human disposition. The notion of dissociation between interest and human nature is really folly. Any sort of solution, for example, the call for climate justice and let us go green and green tech, or the solution of pollution is prosecution, whatever, it is significant to problematize the problem in the context of human behavior. Merely discussing statistical data available, by the way, freely on the net, counting numbers and figures is insufficient to architect a comprehensive climatic action. Likewise, technology and algorithm alone are deficient to save humans. Instead, it demands a transformative shift in the recognition of other institutional stimulations. The involvement of religious persuasion to regulate human behavior and states policy is necessary, mandatory. And this, of course, is the job where Muslim scholars would do a lot by convincing their followers not to pollute. Okay? Islam and ecology. Muslims should embrace sustainable practices and advocating for climate justice, engage with their communities, and Muslims can play a pivotal role in addressing climate change. The teachings of Islam provide a powerful impetus for believers to become active participants in the global movement towards a more sustainable and equitable world. Yes, there are many books and articles. I told you too many from Harvard and Oxford and Cambridge and every place. The problem here is we don't have, most of them, the access is limited. You can only have access through subscription, which means you may not even be able to have the full article or book. This is true. Now just imagine the third world. Muslim states are not that rich, by the way, not super rich, where you have subscription, you understand, available to everything, because you have to pay $30 to $40 to $50 per article. People would not buy it. Now, the question is, how could they cite such work? Yes, certain works are freely available, but we don't have statistics available to us on their exact citations by others, as well as the impact of such work. And this is why work is needed, research work is needed to collect data from databases and the impact citations of these works. To conclude, Islamic teachings emphasize the role of humans as stewards of the earth. The earth is given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a trust, as an amana. And we are encouraged to take responsibility for our well-beings and the well-beings of the other creatures. So we're not the owner of the land, the earth, we are trustees. And when we are entrusted with something, we shall, give it back, by the way, to the one who entrusted us with this work, with this thing. The Quran highlights the interconnectedness of all living things, reminding Muslims of their duty to maintain balance in nature. Consequently, these teachings align closely with modern environmentalism and the global fight against climate change. Furthermore, many Muslim majority countries are particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, such as rising temperatures and water scarcity. These are two huge problems here in Pakistan as well. And of course, in the countries, of the region. That there is a growing awareness within the Muslim community about the need for climate action. Ultimately, by following the principles of stewardship and justice, Islam provides a framework for addressing the challenges posed by climate change. And here in the last slide, as promised, I'm summing up, or just giving you what is said by this great author, Schumacher, and he was an economist. And he has the book, This Small is Beautiful. And there is just 2 sentences here, but they tell the entire story. He says, modern man does not consider himself as part of nature, but as an owner or outside force trying to dominate and conquer it. Yes, this is our attitude, unfortunately. He is at war with nature, forgetting that if he won the war, he would find himself on the losing side. So thank you very much. This was the quick, I would say 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes, of course, of my talk. Thank you so much again for inviting me.
Thank you
I
very
shall
much,
be,
Professor Munir, for your interesting presentation.
you're welcome.
And yeah, the transformation of Islamic studies in the digital era actually has brought significant impact, uh, not only on research methodology, accessibility to the various sources, but also it challenged to the authority, the issue of authority. And especially technology such as AI also bring new opportunities for Islamic studies, as you mentioned. But we also have to be careful that the use of AI for Islamic studies has potential biases and also data manipulation. I think this is an issue that we need to consider in relation to our topic about the digital age and Islamic studies. Now, before I give to the honorable participant, I would like to invite Professor Muhammad Abu Umar to give briefly comment on those two speakers. Please, just short comment. Yeah, you can.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm very, very happy to be here and to listen to distinguished speakers like the two we just listened to. And um, I was happy to hear the speakers today because they also link to what I'm going to speak about tomorrow, inshallah. And for me, what struck me is how, you know, how pertinent the issues are um, for Islamic studies and for Muslims in general, but then also how understudied they are. So we are always waiting for, you know, we're always waiting for others to basically, you know, research for us. So maybe it's time to, you know, assume the responsibility. And I think the two speakers are going in that direction, that we need to do the links ourselves. We need to like, you know, we need to know the, for example, we're talking about climate change in both speakers talk about climate change, right? And but what do we know about climate change as Islamic scholars? What do we know about the science behind climate change? What do we know about um, like, you know, the technicalities behind climate change? And if we don't know these technicalities, then how can we discuss them meaningfully? And I think both speakers are going in that direction, in that we need to engage more meaningfully with these issues. And a big part of that, at least for me, and this is what I got from both speakers, is that there is a lot of work to be done, not just from the Islamic part, but also from the science part. So to bridge the gap, we need to know more about the science, and also the scientists need to know more about our perspectives as well. And thank you.
Thank you. Give applause to Professor Abumar. Yeah, thank you for your brief comment on to the both distinguished speakers. Now I will invite our audience and participant, honorable participant, either in this room or in online. Yeah. Any questions or comment, please? Okay, Professor Muslimin, please.
First of all, thank you very much for Professor Muhammad Munir. I'm sorry to say that Professor Muhammad Munir, when we invite him everywhere and every time, he has made special endeavor to come to our discussion, to come to our seminar from approximately 10 years ago. So it seems that there is a special connection and special cooperation between Sharif Hidayatullah Islamic University and International Islamic University. Thank you very much, Professor Munir. Yeah.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, First of all, just to appreciate again the role of Islamabad in moderating and in mediating Middle East conflict. Yeah. Okay. So could you please tell us? Could you please tell us, as far as you know, how far it influenced toward what we call it as divine balance, and divine balance between nature and war, nature and war, especially in the Middle East. Yeah? And according to you, if you predict how far it will be successful in mediating this conflict, this is, we need Islamabad perspective. Yeah? This is the first. And the second, this is the last. Yeah? Our topic really is going to what we call it the creation of our young brother, Dr. Hamdani. This is the big topic of him, and we use this as our common platform in order to discuss it not only nationally but internationally. Alhamdulillah. Yeah? The problem is with this topic, local wisdom, religious values, Islamic values. As we know, this is very influential in terms of ibadat, in terms of our personal piety. But when we talk about religious values in our public sphere, in our public fairs, we can say that as Muslims, sometimes we do not believe them 100% influential toward our attitude, daily attitude and public attitude. Could you please advise us how to solve this problem? How to solve and how to bring religious values uh, as it is, especially when we are talking about the working experience of Pakistan, the working experience of Muslim countries like in Indonesia and in the Middle East. Thank you very much. Once again, good luck and thank you for your appreciation. Thank you for your coming. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor JM. I invite another participant in the online.
The young student.
All right, please. What's your name, sir? Randy. Randy, please, could you grab the microphone over there? Camera. Could you please point the camera to the speaker? Yes, thank you. otherwise I will be confused. Okay, Professor Munir.
Yes.
I'll try to translate the question from our student here.
Okay.
Okay, the relation between human and nature is that influenced by the Quranic verses, Al-Baqarah verses 29, which says that nature is created by God for human being. Is that because of the understanding of these verses that cause human beings as the center of the creation, and nature is provided by God for humans so that human being can freely exploit the nature? Is that true? That the understanding or the understanding of, because of this understanding, a human exploit the nature freely. Thank you. Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Got it.
You got it? All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll invite one more participant to respond or to raise question, please.
Okay.
All right. Do we have another question from online? No, I think while we're waiting another question, I'll invite Professor Munir because Professor Graf could not respond it because he's not in this conference. So please, Professor Munir, could you respond to those two questions?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, and I'm very thankful for the questions and the comments by the worthy professors. Basically, you know, the first question, rather my own comment, by the way, on the question raised by the friend. Why is Islamabad, by the way, mediating between the United States and Iran? Basically, if you look at the map of the world and the map of the Middle East and the map of the South Asia, you will find out that now Iran has, by the way, been firing missiles and drones at I don't know how many states in the Middle East. Of course, Israel, and especially this Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Kuwait and Bahrain and the ports of Oman and Kuwait and I don't know how many places. All these places, even Azerbaijan was hit, even Turkey was hit, by the way. Whether it was hit by something from fired by the Irani-backed militia in Iraq, or whether it came from Iran. But so all these states were never, by the way, happy with what Iran has been doing. Now, Pakistan was not hit by Iran, and we had no problem with the United States. And the good thing was the Prime Minister and the Field Marshal, they both, by the way, did a great job, by the way. I mean, there was an ongoing, by the way, hostilities, and it was like a disaster for the world economy, especially for the civil aviation, for traveling, for fuel and energy supplies and blah, blah, blah. So it was really a complete disaster, especially for those who are living in the Middle East. They know this, in the Gulf region, by the way. And what happened? Our leaders, they succeeded in stopping this, in convincing the President of the United States, and of course the Iranian leadership, by the way, to at least have a ceasefire. And then the ceasefire got extended. So this was a very good thing. Rather a big wide gap, by the way, which could not be filled in by other states. This is why this Pakistani mediation played a unique, by the way, role. Now, whether it is succeeding or not, but every day there is some suggestion coming from Iran. It is conveyed to the United States, and then the response comes. And the response again comes to Pakistan and is communicated again to the Iranian authorities. And this is happening even today. Something has happened. So, Alhamdulillah, so so far so good, and we hope that there is a sort of lasting peace in the region, and then there is some, what we say, good understanding between what the two big powers. Iran is a big Middle Eastern power, and of course the United States is what, a world power, of course, but it is not good, by the way, for the world, especially the world economy and geopolitics, that there should be what, continuously war between what, Iran and the rest, by the way. But alhamdulillah, our endeavors, the endeavors of Pakistani officials and government have been highly appreciated, and so far, of course, it did well. This, of course, has nothing to do with what climate change, or the topic that we were supposed to discuss. And then there was this question about what we say, what I understood from that question, the second question by our colleague, was basically, look, Allah has created everything, yes, and all these things are created for what? Human being. And Allah has created the human being for what? Okay, that we shall worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if everything is created for us, should we try to destroy it and take it? And no, look at our nature. We get hungry, and once we get hungry, we try to eat something. And then there is some balance created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look, in our body, in our mouth, there are taste buds. The taste buds, by the way, they consider the food that they taste to be very tasty and good, and we start eating and chewing. And then a time comes, the same taste buds do not taste the same food to be what? Tasting at all. And it means your stomach is full. Rather, Allah has, even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us, that the worst of the part that we fill in is the what? Is the stomach. And then he told us that if you want to eat a lot, then divide the stomach into three. فَثُلُثُ لِطَعَامِهِ وَثُلُثُ لِشَرَابِهِ وَثُلُثُ لِنَفَسِهِ. 1/3 for the meal, 1/3 for the what? The water, and the last 1/3 is what? For respiration. I mean, if we eat till what we say we are full, we would be unable to what? To digest it. We would be unable to drink any water. We would be unable to do other human activities. You understand? That this is the balance. It starts from here. Again, God has also given us, by the way, the senses. So we talk, and then the Prophet ﷺ is always mindful of this. And he says, خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ أَوْسَطُهَا. Okay? That the best thing that you are doing, by the way, is what? To do, by the way, to follow the what we say, or what we say, stick to the so-called, average, the percentage, rather what we say, the middle way. So don't exceed in everything. Rather, there is this special hadith. I really love it. إن هذا الدين متين فأوغلوا فيه برق ولا تبغز إلى نفسك عبادة الله فإن المنبت لا أرض قطع ولا ظهر نبقى. The Prophet is so mindful of this, by the way, middle way, in our mannerism, in our nature, in our life, and throughout the life, that he says that this deen, this faith is what? Is a moderate faith. And always try to be what? Mindful of this when you are what we say, living your life. إن هذا الدين متين فأوغلوا فيه برق ولا تبغز إلى نفسك عبادة الله. So if we worship too much, the Prophet has given us a warning. He says, don't try to make ibadat, to what? To be hateful, a hateful thing. ولا تبغز إلى نفسك عبادة الله. Tomorrow you think, you will worship too much. The other day you will say, well, no, I shouldn't worship at all. Why? Because you have exceeded the limits. You have done too much. You have done something too much. So excess of everything is bad, as they say. ولا تبغز إلى نفسك فإن المنبت. If anyone put a lot of load on his donkey or mule or whatever, you understand, today we use truck or whatever, If you put too much load on it, which it cannot sustain, The Prophet then says that person will not be able to either reach his destination. He wants to go somewhere. Now, why? Because the donkeys, the camels or the donkey or the mules, what? Back will be broken. فإن المنبت لا أرضا قطع ولا ظهرا نبقى. The back is also broken and the person could not reach his destination. So if you want to grab everything, hey, everything, collect lots of things, eat a lot. I don't know for how long can we, survive. Whether this is sustainable or not, no. There has to be a balance. So I don't know who put this topic here, balance between what? Everything. Here I say balance in our life first. If we keep balance, inshallah, we will be mindful of what? That this land is entrusted in us. It is not, we are not the owners of it. We have generations to come, inshallah, and use the same land. Okay? Inshallah. So I have tried to answer a couple of questions again. And I guess the last three questions were all, by the way, related to each other. And I guess I have put it, you understand that we have to what? Keep a balance. This is why the Prophet ﷺ, it is the balance, you understand, the middle way. That is always good. So we should not exceed in exploitation of the land. We should not exceed in anything, even ibadat. Okay? Why? Because tomorrow it will be what? Bad for us and bad for the people to come. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us, what we say, to keep a balance. Thank you very much. I hope I have tried to answer the last three questions, I hope. And the first one, of course, was a political question, not a question related to the topic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Munir, for your response. Is there any other questions? Yeah, for short question, because it's already Dr. Hamdani. You could you please directly respond, Professor Munir, to these questions?
Honestly, I couldn't hear anything. There was like silence. So if you could just tell me the gist of the question first.
Okay, I'll try to repeat the question actually.
Okay.
There is a case in the border between Iraq and Iran. United States, yeah, pour the chemical something on the air area, yeah, on the border of Iraq and Iran that cause the area become drought and less water, no rain because of this one. And how Muslims, yeah, or Muslim respond, or Islamic studies, Islamic studies respond to this case, whether it is a test of God, and because this is the test of God, then we have to accept it sincerely, or if it is engineered by human beings, what else? Maybe is that correct? The questions? Yeah. Can you?
Okay, Professor. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, basically, let me be frank with you. I am unaware of anything that has happened in the last few days, but I am aware with the area very well. Last year, almost at this time, I was in what we call the south of Iraq. That is Basra, Nasiriyah, and Qadisiyah, and Najaf, and those areas. And then went back to Baghdad and came back to Babel, and then went to Mosul, and I don't know, Erbil, and then Ambar. So I've been to many places in Iraq, many places, and going by road. Let me tell you, when you travel from to the south, especially from Baghdad towards Nasiriyah and Basra, for more than 100 kilometers, the only thing you could see is sand and sand and sand and sand and nothing else. And I also remember there were like millions of palm trees or date trees in an area near the Iran border. And during the Iran-Iraq war, that area got impacted too much. And out of those millions of, palm trees, now only 500,000 are there. The rest are destroyed. They are dry because of what? The drought and because of the war. And I can also tell you that there was this city with a population of more than 50,000 there during the Iran-Iraq war. And since the palm trees were gone, the migration started toward other cities. It is called Al-Pau. That area is now almost deserted. You may find like 1,000 people there. Again, Iraq had severe drought. Iraq has those two big rivers, both originating from Turkey, and Dajla and Furat, as they call them, a big one. And almost in the middle of every big city, one of the two is what passing. And I have been to most of them. You'll find out that these two are almost drying. Last year I was in Mosul and went to that restaurant on the river. And I could see that on the river there were swamps of mosquitoes. We just couldn't sit outside, by the way, on the bank. We had to sit inside because of the what? The mosquitoes. This year, God was very, what we say, kind to what we say, both the nations. And there was too much rain in Turkey, and the rivers are full. And there is this area, where the two rivers meet before Basra. That area was almost dry, and there used to be too much tourism in that area. The marshes, the marshland. It is this year only, a couple of, you can say a month ago, tourism started again because there is too much water in both the rivers this year. Of course, one of the river comes from Turkey and enters Syria, and after 600 kilometers, it goes to what? It enters, this Iraq, and then it goes to the Arabian Sea. So I'm not aware of this, what we say as a small thing, but of course, remember one of the biggest claim Iran is making right now is what? That it shall be compensated by the United States for all the damage and the destruction that the bombardment has done inside the Iranian territory. Now, God knows, of course, the United States does not agree with this. And I'm not sure if it will ever agree with this. And this is perhaps one of the reasons why Iran is saying, you know what? We'll be charging you money because all the sensitive data is going through cables which are in the Strait of Hormuz, number one. So they want to charge money to the whole world. All those countries which are getting what we say internet through those cables, number one. And another thing is, of course, they say you have to pay money to us when any ship is going, by the way, out of the Strait of Hormuz. You have to pay. Of course, some countries have been paying, by the way, some $2 million. And this will be a lot of money, you understand. But this is the bottleneck here. The United States, of course, does not agree. And the whole, what we say, Gulf cooperation countries do not agree with these claims and suggestions of what Iran. So God knows what is going to happen. But mashallah, Iraq is a big country, and just later on we got to know that there were two, mashallah, places where the Israelis had their own bases. And mashallah, the Iraqis didn't know about it. I don't know whether they didn't know about it, whether they were complicit, or whether they were what happened. God knows, by the way. Okay? Yeah. But I'm not aware of this specific incident. Thank you very much. I hope I have tried to answer your question. So the first question, the big question in Iraq is the problem of climate change. I have been to Fallujah in 2024, and I have spoken on this issue of what we say climate change impacting Iraq, and it has impacted Iraq too much, especially the drought that continued for a couple of years. But this year, God has been very kind to them. There is a lot of water in the two rivers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Munir. I think this is the last question for you. And we wrapping up our session tonight. And thank you again, and give applause to Professor Munir. Okay, thank you so much for our honorable participants for this first session of the ICIIS, the 9th ICIIS. And inshallah, we will see you again tomorrow, yeah, on the same program. Okay?
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Shukran.
Good night. Good night from here.
Good night. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Let's wrapping up our seminar, our program tonight by reciting Hamdalah. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Let's take a photograph together, please. Move forward, all participants.